Hi, everybody. It's Pastor Rob with today's principle in Proverbs. Today's principle is the principle of consequences. It's a powerful, powerful principle, and it's a powerful lesson that every single one of us need to learn. Now, today I'm in the book of Proverbs in chapter 1. By the way, I hope you're joining us in the 31 Days of Wisdom. Every day we're reading a proverb a day. So today's the 6th of January, and so I want to encourage you to read Proverbs chapter 6. Whatever the date is, read that proverb. But today we're still in Proverbs chapter 1. The last episode or devotion, I introduced you to what I think is the most important principle in Proverbs, the principle of listening, understanding that I don't have all the wisdom, and recognizing that God is much smarter than me, and I need to shut my mouth and open my ears and attune my brain to what God wants me to learn. Now, today, we're in the latter part of Proverbs chapter 1, and this section goes from verse 20 all the way to the end of the chapter in verse 33. Now, this is the principle of consequences. And quite frankly, if I were to subtitle this devotion, I would say the scariest verses in all of Proverbs. I mean, these verses ought to scare the absolutely living heebie-jeebies out of you. I mean, the wee-willies, whatever you want to say. You say, Pastor, what are the heebie-jeebies and the wee-willies? I don't know, and I don't want them because they both sound bad. Now listen, this passage here is the passage or the principle of consequences. Now, starting in verse 20, God, through the personification of wisdom, is crying out to you and me, to all the people of the world, and say, listen, there is truth. There is something that's true. There is something that's false. There is something that's right, and there is something that's wrong. And God says, if you want wisdom, I will give you wisdom. And God freely offers wisdom. That's interesting. God personifies wisdom in the feminine gender. He says, and he says, she crieth in the chief places. You say, well, how is that? Now, God always presents himself in the masculine gender in the scriptures. He's always referred to in the masculine gender, but God created male and female. No contradiction, no problem here. And what a wonderful compliment it is from God to the ladies, to that God personifies wisdom. And by the way, all through the book of Proverbs, wisdom is personified in the feminine gender. I think we would do well, gentlemen, to understand that God has given wisdom to our ladies. One of the most wise women that I've ever met was my mother. I learned much wisdom at her knee. One of the greatest counselors that I have is my precious wife. And when I'm smart, I'll listen to the wisdom that God has given to her as a lady. But God, in the personification of wisdom, verse 20 through 23, he says, listen, there's wisdom to be had. In verse 23, wisdom says, hey, turn you. I'm trying to teach you. I'm trying to instruct you. Turn you. But in verse 24, wisdom here, God says this, because I have called and ye refused. I have stretched out my hand and no man regarded. But ye have set at naught all my counsel and would none of my reproof. Now in verse 26, it gets ugly. God says this in wisdom, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. When your fear cometh as a desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish cometh upon you. Now listen, this is some bad, bad, bad times. This is the consequences of decisions. Now God gives us this wonderful thing in life called choice. Choices are one of the great privileges that we have in a free country and as a free moral agent. I get to choose my course. I get to choose my destiny, if you will. And listen, but choices have consequences. And one of the greatest choices that you and I have is to listen, are we going to believe God? Are we going to believe what's in the Bible? Are we going to believe that God is right and God is true and God is holy and God is awesome? And listen, if we're going to choose that should really make a difference in our life. It should really alter the course of our decision making. It should affect every area of our life. Listen, I've often said, if your Sunday morning religion doesn't affect your everyday living, you need to change what you believe, my friend. It is a powerful thing, the power of choice and the power of consequences. In our passage, what we have here is we have God saying, listen, I'll give you wisdom. And you have a group of people that said, no, we're not interested. We're going to do it our way. We don't care what you say, God. We don't care what's in the Bible. And they went about doing life their own way. Unfortunately, the consequences are built in to decisions. That's how God set up life. Do you know why the people who hate God are so mad at God? Because this is what they want. They want to choose their choices, and they want to choose their consequences. They don't get that. You and I only get to do one thing. We get to choose our choices. God gets to choose the consequences. And my friend, you read through those verses starting in 24 through all the way into the chapter, and if that doesn't send a cold chill up and down your spine, the fact that God says, listen, you get to choose. Choose wisdom or choose foolishness. Choose truth or choose error. Choose right or choose wrong. But however you choose, understand you will bear the consequences of it. And God, listen, now God by his grace can step in many times, and sometimes he does, but sometimes God allows you and I, listen, to enjoy the fruit of our consequences and the results of our decisions. So my friends, please listen up. Choose. You got to choose, but choose wisely, because there is a principle in Proverbs, the principle of consequences. I hope this has been a challenge to you. I know it's challenged me. God bless you, friend. Until we meet again, let's keep looking unto Jesus.